What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting, brought to you by Metaview. Metaview's CEO, Sile, is finally back from vacation. Sile, how was vacation?
It was not a vacation. I was busy and I was doing customer meetings multiple at the same time. Okay, that's why I couldn't make the last one. So apologies.
So anyways, Sile, on this week's episode, we talked to Amina Darwish, who's the global head of talent at Vercel. If you guys don't know, Vercel is like one of the hottest companies on planet Earth right now. I would describe them as like the king/queen of vibe coding. Having Amina on was incredible, Sile. I think she's actually like one of the best people in the game right now that many people don't know about. What were your takeaways from this episode?
I think there are two takeaways. One is like very specific, and then one is just more general about, I would actually say, the quality of people generally, frankly, we've had on the pod so far. And I think that Amina embodied really well. The first for me was, she sort of mentioned it in passing, actually, but when she was talking about how they approve hires, they go through CEO approval. She talked about how one of the first things the CEO looked at, who, by the way, the CEO is very, very loud on X and stuff like this. So he's well worth a follow if you don't follow him already. But anyway, the point is, one of the first things she mentioned was, what does the CEO look at when he's approving a hire is who was on the interview panel. And I think that's so interesting that this amazing, like, future generational company, one of the ways that the CEO decides whether we should let new people into the company and sort of affect our talent density, affect our culture, is how much do I trust the people who interviewed this person? So I think that's really interesting when you think about, as a talent leader, one of the things that having a CEO approval forces you to do is to actually be thoughtful and strategic about who are the people we're including. You can't just include the people who are easy to get to easy yeses. And it just completely changes the equation of like, what is elite recruiting? Obviously, it's not getting butts in seats quickly. It's getting the right people in your company to actually increase your talent density. And I think that's a great forcing mechanism. But I just thought it really holds a great mirror up to that talent density focus, when one of the first things they look at is who are the people who are saying this is a good person. And so it's just like, I thought that was really cool. And then the second thing that I was just, again, more general, is just a bunch of the things that Amina was talking about are essentially things that I think in most other podcasts you'd have like yesterday's recruiting leaders talking about as like a bad thing. Oh, the CEO still forces us to, like get their approval for every hire. And, they don't like job hoppers and, yeah. But these people know what they're doing. Like at some level, you have to admit that. And whereas Amina's attitude is just totally like there to serve the business. And that doesn't, of course, you listen to the pod, you'll hear, that doesn't mean she thinks everything that, for example, in this case, the CEO of the company does or says is right. But it does mean that there's like an understanding that high performance recruiting in the context really means serving the business as best that you can and not being like a victim of the situation, but like part of the solution to it, which I think is just refreshing. I think it's been true in every guest we've had on the pod, to be clear. I just thought there's so many examples that Amina gave in particular that really hit home for me.
She enables it, in fact. Like, it's an enabling of the uniqueness of Vercel. Like, that's what I took away from it. So my two big takeaways, and I'd never heard anybody say this, which is recruiters are evaluated on the performance of their hires. Because I was like, okay, like, how is that possible? And like, it turns out the head of tech recruiting sits in on performance calibrations for the engineers. And it seemed so obvious. Like, when she said that, I was like, oh my God, like, why isn't that the case? And it turns out like, people are really worried about learning their colleagues' performance and can the recruiting team handle it? But if you don't do it, how can the recruiting team possibly get more calibrated and hire better people? Like, they don't find out. It was like one of those like, oh my God, how have I not been doing this my entire career moments? That was the first thing. And then the second thing is, they ask every recruiter about the 5 best people they've hired and their business impact. Again, kind of like one of those like obvious, like recruiters should be able to name that. But I actually think what ends up happening is like, we're moving so fast. We're actually not thinking about the second order of, okay, we recruited the person. Now they become an employee at the company. And the most important thing is that they're a high performing employee at the company. And that should define how recruiters think about excellence, how they think about their brand and who they're hiring, and also how they're having an impact on the business.
So good. I think like a great antidote to people that are thinking AI is going to replace recruiters, which, obviously it's going to replace a bunch. Well, may well replace the bad ones. But my point is, if you're actually thinking at that level instead, then that's really what recruiting is about, right? It's about getting great people into the company to do great work. And that is always going to be something that we're always going to have humans in the loop to create alpha on. The task might be completely different, sure. But if you're thinking about it in that way, then Like, it's not even like a will AI replace this thing question. It's just like, it's such a core business priority. So one other minor thing actually that resonated with me, which is nothing to do with recruiting actually, is more like just a personal, just landed with me personally, is she talks about how one of their values is iterate to greatness, which again, I think sounds like a throwaway comment. But actually, when you think about that, I think in many business environments, or like any maybe like competitive environment, sometimes like iteration is sort of almost like dismissed as like, hey, that's like you're just optimizing, you're just iterating there. We need to go for like the big hairy thing. So that's what I really like about the phrase iterate to greatness, is like these two things are not in tension. You can still keep your mind on achieving greatness, but like we want you to take a step right now. And it's literally just something I, as a founder of a company, sometimes like have to wrestle with, is like, hey, are we doing something that's just really iterative and small here when there's this like big, massive sort of shift happening over here? But no, it's like, you need to keep both in your mind. You need to make progress every single day, but not in a way that you're just moving towards a local maximum, but you're moving towards a global maximum. So I think that's like just a really good phrase to almost support people that do take an iterative approach, but without sort of giving them the air cover of just like making tiny incremental improvements, like that, just towards something that's like a little bit better it has to be a lot better in the future, right?
Totally. I mean, honestly, this is like one of my favorite episodes. I've been doing this now for a couple of years, and I've said this a couple of times. We just keep having awesome guests, Sile. So without further ado, here's the latest episode of 10X Recruiting, brought to you by Metaview, with Amina from Vercel. This is 10X Recruiting, a podcast from Metaview. Let's get after it. Amina, you lead talent at Vercel, which is one of the hottest companies on the planet. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Nolan.
So, all right, let's start with Vercel is in the middle of the war for talent right now. What experiments are you guys running to attract and hire the best people?
So in terms of experimentation, something that's like basic fundamentals, it's less of experimentation, but it's like have really good interview panels, have really great interview practices, make sure that you're efficient. We've gotten feedback that we are too long. We need to move faster. So those are some of the areas that we're working on. And then there's also like community building. So something you and I talked about when we first met was, okay, how are we really building community? What are some of the things that we're doing to make ourselves unique? And it's been really fun to see this grow and develop at Vercel. And we do it separately on different sides of the house, but a lot of it is like events, hosting events at our office. It's hosting dinners, getting a group of people, like-minded people, to talk about really interesting topics. It's hosting hackathons, it's joining hackathons. But really, the most important thing that I think we've found a lot of a return on investment, has been like us hosting our own very specific events for like-minded people. On the design side, we did something called Demo Night, which we brought in a bunch of designers. We had some good food, we had some good vibes, and then we had some of our own designers show what they're building in V0. And then we asked other designers to show each other what they're building in V0. And it got a lot of excitement, and people got to just like jam out together, which was really fun.
Like using the product, like actually like using the product as a way to attract talent that actually might work at the company.
Yeah. And actually, right now, we've had a win. We had a designer that we sourced who went dark on us, who we invited to this event, who then came to the event and was just so excited about what she saw with V0 that turned around, reached out to us a couple of days later and was like, here's something I built in V0. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And now we're extending her an offer.
That's a perfect example of actually like an unfair advantage, because you work at Vercel and like it's a developer tool. And so people are actually like using the tool. You want to hire these people, like come on in, see what we're working on, tell us what you're working on. That's awesome. We also talked about these dinners. Look, I tried a bunch of these and I was unsuccessful, but when you told me about your strategy, I was like, that's actually pretty dope. Can you tell the audience about the dinner strategy at Vercel?
Yeah, so we have started a series of dinners at different locations where we are hoping to get like-minded folks who would also be interested in Vercel. Now, these could be people that we are reaching out outbound. They could be people from our network, referrals. They could even be people who are in our process right now. And we are very selective on who we invite. It's typically like 15 to 20 people and folks that we think will have some sort of future here at Vercel, whether it's through the network or whether it's actually working here. And then we select specific people internally from our team that we believe would work well with them, have good dialogue with them. And then we set up dinners. We've also done a women in sales breakfast where we did the same thing, but we wanted to really make sure that that was light. So it wasn't like a huge prompt and have, deep discussions, but it's like, we want to build community. We want to get these really great people together. We want to make sure that they have a space to be able to talk and discuss. And actually, Nolan, that's where you and I met, right? We met
Exactly.
at a church similar to this. The goal of these dinners is not, or events is not to like heavily recruit anybody. It's literally like, come and have a meal with us, break bread with us, because that's the way that I believe you build trust and build safety with folks. And that's how you really get to know each other.
So let's get into the mechanics of this. I'm assuming this is for only like really elite, dope talent. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So say you've had no contact with the person or just like limited contact. Who is sending the message and what does the message say?
The message is typically going out from our leaders. So it's either our head of sales or head of engineering or head of design or whoever it is where we're hosting this event. It is a very specifically curated list. We're going through this list with our leaders. We're going through this list with our team and saying, okay, these are the exact people that we want joining us. And we want them for X amount of reasons. And even like our CEO, has seen some of our lists and been really impressed with who we're inviting and who is able to attend. Then we have them send out an invite. And the invite is like pretty light. Like you're getting an invitation. We want you to come and have dinner with Vercel. Like it's really just as simple as that. But they're getting this invite from Vercel. They're getting this invite from a leader, and it's actually from the leader. It's not some sent on behalf of campaign, because leaders like, I want this person, I want to invite this person specifically. And if they respond back, they can respond back to me and we can get that dialogue going.
Okay. So then at the dinner, is it pretty organic? Does somebody from Vercel introduce themselves and do that? Like, how does that work?
What we've done is at each of these dinners, we've had different sets of leaders join. It's typically one of the most senior leaders at the company, depending on whichever org it is. So we'll talk about the design one, for example. Manuel, our VP of design, he kicked it off. He talked about why he was really excited, talked a little bit about Vercel, and then he had some of our designers show what we're working on with V0, and then why we asked some of the other designers who we've invited to give a little talk or share the examples. And so he's really the one, he was the one sending the invite. He was the one curating the list of people that we had to give talks, and then really was there to mingle. And we even had our CEO, attend, watch some of the demos, meet with people. Like, we want to be as like low ego and humble as we possibly can. There is no too senior of a person to attend any of these events. And you never know like what great talent or who it could open doors for.
Yeah, that's the two learnings for me on this one, which is number one, it's coming from the top and the top is involved. And number two, it's playing the long game. Of course, we want these people to work here, but it feels like right now in this war for talent, especially with some of these early stage companies, they're forgetting about all of the earlier steps in relationship building. When I go and work for a company, it feels like I'm getting married,
Yes.
right? Like, I'm going to post about it on Facebook and LinkedIn. Everybody's going to know. And if it's like a disaster in 6 months, I look like an idiot. And the way to de-risk that is to start building a longer term relationship with the company, right? And this is a great way to do it because I can interact with you. I can interact with other employees, potentially even interact with the CEO, and just like get a feel on what's actually going on inside of the four walls. Because from the outside, I don't know. And I think like a great candidate experience has some version of this to where it's like, I can actually start to not only picture myself working there, but understand the dynamics of what it is like and what success looks like inside the building.
Absolutely. And I think that it's really interesting because when we do leadership recruiting, they spend a lot of time with us, right? Like, they're coming in, they're spending hours with us. We're going to coffee, we're going to dinner, they're reverse interviewing us. And we wish we had that avenue to do that for every single candidate, for every single role. Sometimes you don't have enough time to be able to do that. But the best way is to really understand, what are you opting in for? And make sure that you're opting in for the thing that you want to be doing for the next, hopefully, 3 to 4 years of your life. Are you down for how we communicate with each other? Are you down with how we vibe? Are you down with what the discussions are? And in these types of events, you're really able to do that. And like big shout out to the recruiting team for all of the work that they do to be able to make sure that these are set up for success.
Yeah, it's such a good idea. And it feels like such an obvious thing to do once you get to like the scale you guys are at. It's like play the long game with these people.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about your offer approval process. So we jammed during dinner about this. Like, could you tell the audience, how does it work on the inside when a recruiter wants to submit an offer to a candidate? Like, what are the mechanics that happen there?
So we have a CEO offer approval process. The trend is that this is happening more often with CEOs. I think, 50-50 in terms of companies who are doing this. For what it's worth, I'm a huge fan. I think that it's like the right call. But it needs to be done efficiently. It needs to be done in the right way. It needs to make sure that you're getting the right message across. And Nolan, you and I chatted about this. Like, our CEO is in meetings back to back every day, super busy, but reviewing all offers, whether it's from intern to execs. All offers, every single person that is coming to Vercel as an employee needs to get approved by him. And so we essentially have like 15 to 20 seconds to make sure that whatever he is reading is the right information and he is able to make a decision based off of that information. And so it's really like backing into it. Number one, do you have the right interview panel? Top talent hires top talent. Are we asking the right people to interview? Is when he looks at those offer packets, is he going to say, okay, I believe in the people that are interviewing this person. I understand that they are going to have the right feedback, and I trust that that feedback is going to give me what I need. Number two, do you have a work product? Every single candidate at Vercel has to have a work product for us to submit an offer. That work product can vary from role to role, right? Some can do take-home exercises. Some might do a presentation. Some might do a specific exercise live with the interviewer. But there is something that we are submitting for all candidates. And then there is a hiring manager justification. So this goes back to every single hiring manager has to feel confident that every single person that they are hiring should go to our CEO, that they feel good about why they're putting this person in front of our CEO. They believe this person will be successful, not just today, but for the next 2 to 4 years. Like, we're not just hiring for today. We believe that this person has a high aptitude, they're going to grow with the company, and they're going to evolve with how we need them to do. Do our interviews check for that? Does a hiring manager believe in that? Are they able to showcase impact? Like, we've really had to do a lot of like what we call iterate to greatness. So we say ITG. So we've done a lot of ITG on this process, but it's like keeping it short enough, no more than 5 bullets, but making sure that every single sentence shows a lot of impact. If you're submitting somebody from sales, we want to see logos that they've closed. We want to see quota attainment. We want to see average deal size. If you're doing customer success, how have they grown accounts? If you're on the engineering side, how do they do on their technical exercise? If you're a recruiter, we are having you do a sourcing exercise. What kind of people will you find for us? And all of that goes into a packet that I then review and then submit to our CEO. It's not like an easy path. And it certainly has a huge lift, but I believe it is absolutely worth it because it makes sure that every single person we hire is somebody that we absolutely feel confident should be coming into this company.
How many of these, like what percentage get rejected?
Last year, he approved 91%.
Okay.
So not bad. Not bad.
Well, it's actually like, that sounds like the perfect number for me. So like, let's talk about the 9%. What's going on there? Like, why is he rejecting?
So it could be various reasons, but some of the themes are, number one, short stints. This is tough, right? Because some candidates could have an absolutely good story as to why they had short stints. But typically, like, we don't want to see short stints. So for those of you who are listening, it's important to stay committed to a job, and it's important to show the impact that you've done at that job, and it's important to show that you will grow with that company. One of the biggest red flags is like somebody who's been somewhere for a year or for a year and a half over and over and over again. And we've had that. Now, it is also on the recruiter and the hiring manager to have the full story, to be able to defend the reason, even if we submit them, as to why.
I'm really curious about the experience of when he pushes back on an offer. So taking a step back, we did this at DoorDash. I just talked to Greg Garrison, who's the head of talent at Coinbase. They do it there too. It seems like it's becoming more common, which I like, because that is a signal to me that the CEO cares about the talent bar. when Tony used to push back at DoorDash, the experience was like, it's like the fastest path to understanding how Tony's brain works for everybody in the company. It's like when he pushes back and you don't have a great answer, immediately you're like, oh my God, I got to like up level myself and make sure that if this happens again, that I present a lot better. Is that happening with you guys too?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And, I'm not doing this perfectly still. I still have misses. And he and I will have good, healthy debates sometimes too, right? And I can push back on him as well. And he is willing to listen, which I really appreciate. Is that from when I first joined to now, I'm like, okay, I understand. I know how to push the hiring managers. I know how to push the recruiters. I know what I'm digging into. We are trying to incorporate some of the things that would be considered as flags earlier on in the process, like just in our interview process. So it doesn't have to come to the end of the process where I have to push back or he has to push back. But yeah, every single time I'm like, he's right. I should have thought of that. And sometimes he can, we can have a good debate. He could be wrong. And he's willing to listen, but you got to have a good reason to defend that.
Yeah, it's what I was talking to Greg about. It's like, there's very few times when when I thought he was wrong. But when I did, I would be like, Tony, I'm going to put my badge on the line for this one. Like, if this one doesn't work out, you can fire me. And obviously, like, he didn't fire me. What CEOs are really looking for, especially when there's questions, is conviction. They want conviction and they want to know that you are going to be the person who is held accountable if this thing doesn't work. And typically they'll give you a ton of rope, especially like if it doesn't work and you learn from it. Like that's ultimately what smart CEOs want. But I just feel like most companies have these bad hiring practices and that's what they're trying to be against. Like they don't want mid talent, especially at a company like Vercel.
Exactly. And what you said is so true, where he just wants to know that you're willing to fight for this person. If you're willing to back down as soon as he pushes, then why did you even put the offer in the first place?
Exactly.
Right? Like then you clearly do not have enough conviction. Every single person that a hiring manager is bringing onto their team here or at any company, they should believe is the best person for the job. They're not just filling a head. They're not just filling something that we need to do in the next 6 to 12 months. It's like we are org building here and we are building for the future. And we need to make sure that how we think about that resonates with every single person who's hiring and how we put the offers together.
So you mentioned this work product being a requirement for every role. Why is that important for you guys?
So what we believe is that some people will interview really well and some people will not interview really well. Neither way is the full indicator of whether this person is going to be really successful at a company. And so we've seen people who've like just absolutely crushed interviews, were amazing communicators, great storytellers. And then they come into the job and they're not performing. And maybe it was less of a skill issue, more of a will issue. They weren't motivated. And then we've seen people who weren't the best communicators and maybe were a little bit long-winded or maybe weren't able to tell the story in the way that we wanted. And then their work is just amazing. So we want to be able to give the candidate an opportunity to showcase their work. We also want to see their thought process. We want to see how they solve problems, how they work through things, what kind of questions they ask. It's an opportunity to dig into curiosity. And it's really a great way for us to just like pair with them. Like engineers do pair programming. Right. And so this is our way of pairing with them and all the other teams as well.
So how does it work? So does let's just go through something specific. We'll talk about the recruiting one in a second because I find that one really fascinating. But say I'm a super busy candidate, right? Maybe actually let's do execs because I think execs are actually really hard. How do you think about it with execs?
Execs have to do work products too.
Okay. What are they? Like, what's an example?
So we are hiring a leader for a product marketing team right now. So a VP for a product marketing team, going through the process. I mean, this is it's a pretty hefty prompt. So we asked them to do a go-to-market retrospective on like they're launching to enterprise. How would they think about that? What would they do? So not only do they have to show us like how they would think through that problem and solve it, but they have to present it back. And by the way, our COO and our chief product officer are who they are presenting to. So it goes both ways. They're putting in the work and the time. We're putting in the work and the time as well. And we're willing to do prep calls with them. We're willing to spend a ton of time with them. Like we are willing to do everything that we need to do to make sure that they're set up for success. And then it's also on them to show us like how much time are you willing to put in? What kind of questions are you asking? How much do you want to learn about our business? And what do you want to do? Another exercise that we ask them to do is do a strategic narrative and portfolio positioning. So our Vercel's product portfolio is growing. We're adding a ton more products, right? And we're in the AI space. We're also in the security space. Like, how would you position us? This is for product marketing, obviously. How would you think about that? How would you position us? And they did a whole exercise. I don't know how many hours they spent on putting this together. Then they did an hour walkthrough with our C-level execs, who they did really well with. Then they did a follow-up with G, our CEO, and they walked him through it. Here's like what I did. Here's how I would think about it. And then also his interview is having them walk him through work that they've done. So like, show me your actual work. Now it varies for some of the interviews that he does. It depends on the role and depends on the team. But for this specific one, like, here are the things that we did. And let me show you the impact that it had. And that was just like, it's so much easier to drive through, like, just show me your impact than it is to be like hypothetical. Okay, well, what would you do in this situation? I think that there's like a time and place for both, but the best is to be able to see like, here's what I actually did and here's how I would do it for you.
That's for sure the highest signal. Now, the pushback is always, well, like the best talent is always busy and they might not have time. And so what I'm hearing from you is like, one, you do it towards the end of the process. Two, you explain why it matters to the company, right? So it's like, hey, we're trying to get signal to make sure that this is a good fit. And we're giving you asymmetry on us, right? Like, this is going to be like kind of what your day-to-day is like. Hopefully here, like, both of us are getting signal on each other. I'm sure like that's the pitch, but I'm also sure that's like some candidates are like, I don't have time for this. So how do you guys handle that?
That's absolutely the pitch. And you'd be surprised. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if we're really leaning in with a candidate and they're really leaning in with us, even if they were sourced, they don't withdraw because we've done enough of the upfront work to get them interested and excited. And the expectation is the hiring manager needs to be leaning in really heavily with this, right? It's not just like, here's your prompt, go and do it. I'll see you later. It's like, I'm here with you. You're going to see how I manage you. You're going to see how I work with you. You're going to see what I need from you. And then this is a great way for us to be working together. And so we have them lean in, but like some candidates we'll walk them through the process. And we're also very upfront and say, we have a rigorous process at Vercel. We do a really intense deep dive. It is by design. It's by design because number one, we want to like really understand how you would work here and how you would work with us. Number two, we want to make sure that this is the right mutual match. And number three, you then know exactly what you're getting yourself into, right? You know what you're doing. Once you've started, you're not starting at a zero. Like, you're starting with trust. You're starting with knowing how this team works. And you are already leaned into the work that you're going to do.
I love the take on starting with trust. I hadn't even thought about that, but that actually is like huge. It's like, not only do you understand like what it's going to be like, but like we've already done some work together. And so like, I trust you, you trust me, like, let's get to work. And so when, the initial 30 days, 60 days, like it's hard to get off the ground, you actually have like a little bit of a foundation to work off of. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the recruiting process for recruiters. You and I jammed probably for like an hour at dinner about this topic. Tell me about what that's like.
Our process is rigorous. Okay, I have to admit. Now, feedback for myself was we got to move faster. Definitely. Like, I think we have continued to iterate our process to move faster. But just like any other team at Vercel, like, we have a really rigorous process for recruiting as well. And so up front, after we do the initial screen, we're asking a recruiter to do a take-home assignment, and it has two pieces to it. Number one, we ask them to send a sample sourcing messaging that they've shared. What we're looking for is like, how do you write? Are you creative? Do you have like good messaging, right? Like, we want to make sure it's aligned with how we think about it. Number two, we ask you to pull 5 people that you've hired, why you're proud of them, and what impact that they've made on the business. This is something that we've recently implemented in this last batch of like recruiting for recruiters that we've done. And we find that to be really, really interesting because like, I think like in knowing you and I believe talked about this, but there's a shift on recruiting. Like recruiting, the best recruiters are not filling seats. The best recruiters are building orgs, and they're building orgs that are going to be long lasting. And they're going to look back and say, wow, this team, like, I built this team and they built the next V0. I built this team and they took us from 200 million to 500 million. Like that's the kind of teams that we're looking to build. It's not like, oh, I had to hire 100 people and I hired 100 people. Actually, in fact, we want to be lean, right? Like hiring, like the number of hires you make. Yes, of course, like that's the metrics recruiters care about. And we have a goal. But if I look back on my this year and they say, great, Amina, you hired all of the people that you needed to hire, but we don't have any top performers, like I'm failing. My team is failing. Our hiring managers are failing. It's not about the number of hires, it's the quality of hires that you make.
It's such a good question to get to the root of the thing, which is, do you care about quality? Do you care about talent quality at the company you are currently hiring for? I actually think most recruiters do care, but then they have like these goals or these pressures or these things, and then they get beaten down to this point to where it's like I got to hit this goal. And so, like I stopped thinking about quality. But when you start to ask them like, who's the best people you've hired and why, and what impact have they had on the business, then the recruiter actually has to start thinking like they're an owner.
Yes.
And that they are truly the gatekeeper to getting inside of the company to ultimately like, hopefully all of us are equity holders to where we can all accrue value. It blows my mind that people actually don't have a good answer to this question, but I'm sure you're finding that many of them don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is unfortunate, but yes, we have had people who haven't had best answers and that we haven't moved forward with after this exercise. That goes to, and I'm kind of jumping here, but one of the things that I want to share is that our recruiters, their performance is also based on the people that they hire. So we have a recruiter scorecard, and part of the recruiter scorecard is the performance review of all of the people that they've hired. So when we go through, we're like, okay, did the people that they hired, are they successful here? Or do we hire a bunch of people? This person hire a bunch of people. Now, it's not just a recruiter, right? It's paired with a hiring manager. Do we have the right process? Are we thinking about things the right way? But like you are tied to the quality of people you're bringing on. And that will affect your performance of the company. It will affect your compensation in the future because if you have a lower score on your performance, you get less pay. And so it's like a constant incentive of hiring the right people to the company, not just filling seats.
Why don't more people do that? Like that feels like the whole goal of recruiting is to bring in great people, but I don't think I've actually ever heard of a company measuring recruiter performance that way.
Hopefully more companies will move in that direction. Hopefully this podcast will be helpful for people to guide them. And yeah, I mean, it can be controversial, right? Because a recruiter can be like, well, they passed the interviews. They got all strong yeses. They crushed it. How am I responsible for whether they performed or not? So absolutely, it's not just on the recruiter. But what I would want to go back and say is like, okay, this person's not performing. They got strong yeses, but was that the right interview process? Were we for the right things? That's what we have to go back and reflect on.
Yeah. So it's a recruiter is not just pushing candidates through a process that was designed by somebody else. It's actually like you are in charge of this process to ensure we are hiring great people. And that's soup to nuts. That's candidates, but that's also how we assess. And so if you're finding gaps in how we assess, this is our way of holding you accountable to making sure that those gaps get filled.
Exactly. Like your job to go to the hiring manager and say, this is where it goes back to talent needs to be like true business partners. They need to be really embedded into the businesses that they're recruiting for. They need to understand what are the holes, what's working, what's not working. Do you understand the strengths and gaps of every single person on your team? And then you know how to help your hiring manager build teams. Recruiting sits in calibrations, by the way, performance review calibrations here at Vercel. Recruiting and people are like very deeply in one. Yeah, because like hiring is only one part, right? Knowing how these people do and how they perform is a huge indicator of how we should be hiring. And so we actually just went through a performance review calibration, and our head of technical recruiting sat in on all of the engineering calibrations. And she's newer too, so it was like a good fresh set of eyes. And she has gotten a ton of great ideas of how we can iterate. our engineering interview process based off of the feedback that we heard of why some engineers are performing really well, and also why some engineers are not performing really well. What did we not test for? What should we be coaching for? Like, those are some of the aspects that we pick up a lot from these calibrations.
That is such a great idea. And I think like the general pushback is always like, well, we don't want to have, another aspect of the organization involved in knowing someone's performance. But like what you're saying is like the business case is very clear here, which is only have like, recruiting leadership, right? So like call it like you, the head of tech recruiting, head of business recruiting, whatever, only in like the specific vertical. So like engineering, it's head of tech recruiting and you. Sales, it's head of business recruiting and you, right? But like that makes so much intrinsic sense. And it's something that's like never dawned on me of like to do, but like that's actually how you can make sure the left hand is talking to the right hand.
And I'm super lucky because my direct partner, Olivia, who's our head of HR business partners, we joke like we're two peas in a pod. We literally like, we are doing this together. It's not like HR VP on one side and recruiting on one side. It is like, we are driving this business and org design together. And we understand and we're keeping each other posted on what's happening on the talent side, what's happening on the HR VP side. We're including each other on both sides of the house. So we then understand, how do we make sure like our collective goal together is that we have to build the right organization and we have to make sure that they're set up for success and we have to make sure that they're performing. Now, we're certainly not doing everything perfectly. We still have a long ways to go, but that trust and that relationship then equates to us being able to partner better with our executives.
Yeah. And it actually, you are accountable to it, but unless you actually hear what's going on in those conversations, that accountability is hollow. Like once you hear what's happening in those conversations, and then if you don't go fix it, then certainly we can hold you accountable. But otherwise, it's just like, oh yeah, like all I can control is the process and like how they perform. I don't know, which is typically the way that companies think about it. That's super smart. Let's talk about your founder and just like really quickly. So like one of the jokes you and I had at dinner, which is, it sounds like your founder is terminally online. So am I, by the way. He seems like a really interesting, smart person. Like, what's it like working with G?
He's a really interesting, smart person. He's really funny. He holds a really high bar, and as he should. He is a CEO of a company. He is looking to build a generational legacy type of company that is changing the future of the web. It's changing how we use AI, and you have to be innovative, and you have to really hold a high bar for that. I do think that like G is our best salesperson. He's our best marketing person. He's our best recruiter. I don't know if he's our best engineer. He's one of the best. We have some really great engineers here too. He is our best product person. And he holds that bar for everybody, right? And somebody who can hold that bar and do all the things that you're doing, then you push everybody else to be like, be better. Because I can hold this bar, so I expect you to hold this bar. He pokes at things, you're like, how did I not catch that? How did I not think about that? It's similar to what we were talking about with the CEO offer approval process, right? It's like, he'll see one line and I've read this packet like 10 times. How did I not catch that? But he's just seeing something differently than what I'm seeing. And I think he does a lot of the same when it comes to all different aspects of the business. It can be hard, for sure, when you're pushed to like always have a really high bar and your work product can be questioned sometimes. So you certainly have to like lean into wanting to be in a culture and an environment where you're like very much pushed directly. He's going to tell you when your work sucks and he's going to tell you when your work is great. And there's no sugarcoating in either direction. So when your work is great, he will give you a shout out. He's actually very good at that. He's great at recognition. He's great at giving shout outs. He has a channel internally that he's always sharing thoughts, and he will give people shout outs for the great work that they've done. He will also equally call you out and be like, why is the quality of this like so bad? Or why is this so slow? Or we should have caught this. And that is actually what a leader should do.
Totally. So I've worked for two intense founders who had very similar styles with this. And what I learned was it was really difficult initially for me because, typically like when you haven't been close to the sun and now all of a sudden like the sun is on you all day long, you start to realize like how many gaps there are in your game that you need to up level in order to meet this person's expectations. Did you have a similar experience?
Oh, absolutely. And the amount that I've learned in the last year because of that is amazing. And not that like I've learned a lot from all of the founders and all of the people that I've worked with. High touch founders were very similar too. But like when you're getting raw feedback, and there's no like filtering, right? There's no like, okay, like let me write this feedback to you and make sure that you're going to receive it in the right way. It's like, yo, this sucks. Be better. You start to be like, whoa, okay, like how do I make sure that this doesn't suck and I be better without any of the softness that comes with it?
That's what it's actually like reporting to a very intense founder who is building a generational company. Like that's been my experience. And I've been using this term recently, which is if you're going to have like your job, Amina, you have to have incredible emotional resilience because, you're going to get punched all day long, right? Because there's just going to be gaps. Like that's the nature of like building the machine while the plane is like already in air and flying. And so there's going to be gaps. It's about how you respond though. And so like, I'm curious, like when you get this feedback, what do you do? Like, how do you respond to him? How have you continued to earn his trust and re-earn his trust?
I think in the beginning, it was like shell shock. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I had questioned myself, like, am I good enough? Should I be here? Imposter syndrome. Do I know what I'm doing? Absolutely. And I think that that's been the case in every job that I've had and every time that I've gotten feedback initially when I'm starting to learn that person. What I've done, so number one, I think that I'm lucky that I've been able to get enough of the feedback over and over to understand the patterns and the themes and the things that he cares about and the things that he's going to push on and be able to then influence that to the team, then to the hiring managers so that we get ahead of these things. And that has shifted over time. I don't think that the feedback that he gave to me a year ago has gotten better. But then there's new feedback because we're evolving and we're changing and we're thinking about the ways that we're doing things. And so there's like a continuous growth and learning. In fact, how I've reframed it in my mind is like the fact that he's giving me feedback means he cares. The fact that he's giving me feedback means he respects me. And that's to anyone, whether that would be him, whether that be our Jenny, our VP of people, or any of the other execs, or anybody on my team, anyone who gives that to me. If you're giving anybody feedback, it's because you care, you want that to be better, and you are wanting to help that person. So like, I will take that. And then it's like, what can I learn from this? And what can I go and teach my team from this? And then what can I go and do research on the space or whatever it is that I might be getting feedback on? How can I be better?
Yep. My high school baseball coach always used to say, the time you should get concerned is when I'm not giving you critical feedback, because then I don't care about you anymore.
Exactly. Staying under the radar is actually, in our types of roles, you don't want to be staying under the radar because like you need to know if you're doing things right or if you're completely effing up, because what we do is some of the most expensive things in the business. Like we are hiring people, we're spending our money, and we need to make sure that we're doing it for the right people. Amen.
Where can people find you in Vercel?
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. We can add my LinkedIn profile here, or you can send me a note at amina@vercel.com.
Awesome. Amina, this was a blast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.